Good evening. Welcome to the Westwood Planning Board meeting. I'm Trevor Lovenstein, and I'll be chairing this meeting. All meetings are recorded by WestCat. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to record this meeting? And if so, could you please identify yourself? Okay, so noting none. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phone ringers and anything else that makes noises in the room. The agenda is available at the rear of the room, or in this case, to my left of the room. The meeting will follow the order in the agenda. The meeting will be civil and all people will be treated respectfully. The format of the meeting will be when an item is called, the applicant will come forward to the podium to present their application to the board. The board will proceed to staff comments. The board members will ask questions of the applicant, and then the public will be given an opportunity to comment. When it's time for the public comment period, the chairman will call those wishing to speak to the podium. And once at the podium, please identify yourself by stating your name and address for the record. All comments and questions shall be directed through the chair. All people will be given the opportunity to speak, but in the interest of time and fairness, repetitive or off-topic comments may be cut short. I understand there's one change to the agenda at this point in time, and that is that the first item, the University Station Development Area B, enabling package review, will be postponed to Tuesday, May 15th at 7 p.m. at 50 Carby Street. Are there any other changes to the agenda tonight?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. With that, we'll go to item 2, which is 247 Station Drive. It's an NSTAR Electric Eversource. It's a minor modification request to modify the October 3rd, 2017 EIDR approval for ground-mounted solar canopies in the parking areas. Do we have an applicant at the ready?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Board, for the opportunity to present tonight. My name is Brian Tracy. I'm with Brightfield Development. I'm here on behalf of Eversource Energy. I'm here with Jack Lopes, the Community Relations representative for Eversource. I'm here tonight, as mentioned earlier, to request a reduction to the size of the approved Westwood Solar Canopy project, approved in October 10, 2017. We have a few poster boards here to present to folks. We had approval for 18 canopies, or 2.25 megawatts, approved in October. And we are requesting a modification to this to have 4, only from 18 to 4, a subset of the 18. The modification is the 4 in the front. I can walk over there if that'd be helpful, Jack. So I went from 2.25 megawatts, these 18 here, down to just these 4 here, for a total of 350 kW, 356 kW. In terms of the vegetative plan, we understand how important it is to the town for that. We are not changing that. We're keeping that the same. We brought a poster board to show the vegetative plan layer on top of the 4 proposed canopies here in the front. So this is what was approved back in October. We don't intend to change that there. And as part of the planning plan, we have a demolition plan, a site preparation plan, which we would alter based on the changing design here. So instead of having all these trees removed here and down here, we're going to keep those in place and just remove the 20 total 13 trees and 7 shrubs up front here as canopies are going, instead of the 71 trees that were proposed to be brought down. So it went down from 71 to 20 as part of that. We are requesting a timeline modification for the planning. There was a condition in the approval for implementation of the vegetation planning plan by May 31 due to the construction delay. We would like to push that to fall 2018. And the game plan is to have an RFP process. This is part of a program. This project is one of 18 projects in the program. And to sort of leverage the economies of scale in various projects, we would run through the RFP process to procure the landscaping services in early summer, and then install the proposals to install in the fall of this year. Before the closeout of the building permit. With that, those are the highlights, and happy to answer any questions if there are any comments from the board.
All right, thanks very much. Are there any comments from town staff or you, Abby? This one at the moment?
No, the only, this is a minor modification. They contacted me about what they would need to submit for modification. I had suggested if they weren't changing the landscaping, if they were still going forward with the plantings, the new plantings that you approved in the fall, and they no longer have to remove the plantings in the parking lot that they were going to remove previously with the canopies. And I suggested they could come in to you for determination on if it's going to be minor. Otherwise, if you don't determine it's minor, would need a public hearing and notice to abutters, and we did not do this for this request. So you should make a determination if you find this to be minor, and then you would need to vote on the request itself.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Are there any questions from the board? No. Comments from the board? Steve, go ahead.
All right, so 4 words here, based on market conditions. That's the only explanation for why you're doing this. Think you could elaborate on that a little?
Sure, absolutely. The market is such that panels and panel efficiencies, availability of the panels change. And what had happened, there were some smaller, less efficient panels available earlier in the program, and the contractor was able to procure more efficient panels for other projects, which led to other projects sort of getting bigger. And because of the Department of Public Utilities has approved 62 megawatts for this program, and no more than that, it was decided that this project would be reduced down from the 2.25 to 356 kW.
Well, it's a 85% decrease in the amount of energy produced here. And you're calling that a minor modification? We have goals in this state for greenhouse gas emissions, for energy use, all to reduce the effects of climate change. And this certainly isn't going to help at all. This would have been a very good example of Eversource doing something and showing how this works, how this provides, enables the state to meet those goals, and it's something that we all need. I think we've seen in recent storms the sea rise, the way the water was overflowing, the piers in Boston. This is climate change is a serious matter, and I thought Eversource was going to step up and really show that they are part of it. They're going to save energy, and who better to do that, to make a demonstration of this would be this project. And you would certainly put them everywhere you could originally, and now just throwing that all away, with leaving only 15% of what you originally had.
No, understood. The reduction from 2.25 to 350 kW is substantial. It's the way the program has worked. If they could install more, they would. But because the DPU has capped it at the 62 megawatts, that is what they're constrained to at this particular time with this program.
If I may, Jack Lopes with Eversource, we're still going to build what the state is requiring, which is the 62 megawatts. We're not reducing it. We can't go beyond that, and we're not reducing it. So we're still going to build it. It's just that as the panels are becoming more efficient, we don't need as much as we need it. But we can only go up to that 62 megawatts per the regulation of the DPU.
So that's what, everywhere in Massachusetts, or everywhere in your service area, that you're somewhere else, you're providing that amount of energy savings, and this ended up being just the amount you needed to fill that maximum?
Correct. So we have to do the amounts in Eastern Mass, which is the former NSTAR territory, and then we have to do the same amount in Western Mass, which was the Western Mass Electrical. So and National Grid also has to do the same amount, and Unitil has to do the same amount. So there's 4 utilities or 4 sites in the state that need to make those requirements. And Eversource has 2 of those areas, which is Western Mass and Eastern Mass.
And if you did more than, or can you do more than what they required?
We cannot, because we are regulated, we are only allowed to expense what the DPO allows us to.
So in other words, this is a political consideration at the state level, that the state has set this arbitrary cap,
Correct.
which they failed to raise. So the only remedy here is, what, to speak to our state reps and senators and tell them to raise this cap?
Yeah, in the 62 megawatts, there is a subset of the 70 megawatts, which is part of the Green Communities Act. And if that is raised, then Eversource can construct and build more. That's right.
So would you be willing, if that happened, you'd be willing to go and put the rest of them in as that occurs? If we can get that to occur?
Well, yes, I mean, we'll always meet the requirements of whatever stipulated to Eversource by the DPU. The question then becomes, where is the most economical way to build it? So this one can always still be in the books to be built. But meantime, you know, if this happens a few years later, and we have some other areas that are more efficient to do it, then we would do it there, as long as we meet the state standard. That's what we go by. We can't commit that we would build it here, but if that cap is increased, then we are mandated to build it. Where that is, we'd have, then at that point, we would decide what's the most economical place because of our ratepayers.
Is there any other sites in your regions that were reduced?
As a matter of fact, a number of the canopy sites where I've been a project manager for have been reduced. We have projects down in Plymouth, New Bedford, and East Springfield, and they've all been reduced to some form or another based on various constraints, whether it be part of the program or whether it be site constraints or other constraints. But you know, to hit this number of 62 for this phase is what the goal was based on these regulatory.
Now, is this number regional or statewide?
Statewide.
So you have to, in your 2 regions, come up with
70 total, or 62 during this phase. That's
70
right.
total on each
That's right.
of those sites. 70 on Western Mass and 70 on Eastern Mass.
70 and 70. So it is regional. The number is regional.
Per utility company. So NSTAR has to build 70, Western Mass Electric has to build 70, National Grid has to build 70, Unitil has to build 70.
So if this cap was here all along, how come you asked for more now and you just realized that you're over the cap?
Because efficiencies on panels. We need less to get the same amount out of now.
So are you saying then it's not that they're not going to be more panels somewhere else, but you have more efficient panels somewhere else, and so the total wattage is the same?
That's correct. That's correct.
But here, the total wattage is 15% of what it was before. That's significant, but that's just made up for elsewhere?
On the other side.
At other projects within the portfolio, the program portfolio.
I was also wondering why you chose the ones you did, because they were on the side of the building. It looks like it may even be in the shadow in the late afternoon. If you looked at that, why did you choose those?
They were chosen to have the most impact and to sort of express the commitment to clean energy. As folks go up Station Drive, they're right there in the front of the building.
That's a advertising thing. You're showing that you're doing it because you're putting it at the front of the building. But is that the most effective place to put them?
There was analysis done of the production, and the production is sufficiently high in the front of the building as opposed to the back of the building.
I mean, would there actually be a shadow on these in the late afternoon?
I don't know what percentage of the shading, but that shading analysis was completed as part of this.
Abby, so what's the process if we do not find this to be a minor modification?
Then we would schedule this for a public hearing, and we would send the notice to the abutters and newspaper. So the applicant would have the opportunity to revise the plans to submit to you again, but they could submit the same plan. So the difference really is, it would be a public hearing with notification to the abutters and to the newspaper. That's a, difference in the application process.
So in a year or two, if they found they could put more up, got the cap was raised or whatever, would that require another minor modification? Or would they submit a new application to that? Maybe do you have any answer?
I would suspect that we would file a new application for that, yeah.
So this project right now, this program with the 4 utilities, these 70 megawatts at each of the centers, has to be built by December of 2019. So that's when this program, the deadline is for the program. Then I would imagine if they decide to increase any of the caps, then the deadlines for those caps would be beyond 2019.
Wow, this is still disappointing, given the greenhouse gas reduction goals that, the ones I've seen they're pretty far-reaching, but and you wonder how we're ever going to get there if we keep doing things like this, saying we're going to put out solar panels and then reducing it by that amount.
But we're not reducing the total
Yeah, the whole,
mandated
right.
number within the
But obviously, if there were more solar panels put up, if you didn't have the cap, there'd be a whole lot more energy being produced in a renewable, non-polluting way.
So if you had to put the original panels here, does that mean that you would reduce the number of panels somewhere else that you have to? Or is it, I guess the regulation, is that a legal limit or is it a economic limit? You have to count?
It's a DPU mandate.
Yeah.
So
Regulatory.
if you did these, would you have to reduce somewhere else to keep it at that same level? If you did the original 18 here.
Yeah, theoretically, correct.
Yes.
And those are all these projects are actually under construction, except for this one here in Westwood. So this one,
This would be
we were hoping to get started in the wintertime, and winter's not a great time to construct.
Yeah, I know we rushed to get this done so you could do this.
Understood.
And then it didn't get done, and now you're coming back with an 85% reduction. Well, I have further concerns about the landscaping, because on the east side of the building, on the top of the hill, you're going to put them in, so at that time, obviously, any trees that would have been there would have been lost. But there were trees, I believe, in the original plan, which were either never planted or they never developed, so that, so we're still, if there are no panels on that side of the building, we're still missing a whole lot of trees that should have been there. Yeah, right over there.
So, say this again, though, the trees,
Yeah, so the original plan showed rows of trees just the way you would plant them along the street. How many feet apart do we require?
This was from when the
original.
building, from
Yeah.
back in,
When the building was originally built, there were supposed to be trees along that
There never
side of the
were
building.
trees.
And I went out when this came up and looked, and there were only about 2 or 3 trees there. There should have been a whole line of trees, as I recall, from the original acceptance.
Along this side here.
So, I mean, it's not a screening thing, so we don't need them packed in the way they were over there. But we do need them with what's the normal separation for, every 20 or
subdivisions, I think you say 30 feet?
every 30 feet? I think, every 25 feet we have them. I don't know how many of those trees that would be, but that would seem reasonable. We want them to have a line of trees that actually will grow and not crowd each other out, but whether they were planted or not, I'm not sure. They might have just been planted and not survived and were not replaced, so they should be replaced were planted now.
Can take that back. Sure.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? 18-inch, probably.
About 18 trees.
18?
Mhm.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions, comments?
Nothing additional.
Okay, so I guess we have two things to do. One is to determine if this is a minor modification. So I guess I'd entertain a motion to that end.
So moved.
All right, do I have a motion? Do I hear a second?
I second that.
All right, all those in favor of finding the 247 Station Drive project a minor modification, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. So we have a vote 4-1.
Yeah, I have to say, to me, it's not really minor, but.
Sorry, any further comment? I didn't say any further comment.
But to get this thing going,
Yeah.
I'm calling it minor, but in reality, it's not really minor.
85% is not mine.
Okay. So we talked about trees. Is the applicant amenable to adding, I guess, between 18 and 20 trees along the eastern edge of the parking lot? Okay. So I guess, how should we embed that into our decision, to make that a condition of the approval?
You can make that a condition.
Okay.
Then, so you should be voting on the revised plans for the fewer canopies, and then you should be specific also on the request of when the planting should be in. The original decision from last fall had said the tree plantings had to be in by the closeout of the building permit or by May 31st. So they've requested the fall, so you should maybe specific. Usually November 15th is when we would recommend with the last plantings before the winter.
Okay. So we basically have two conditions. One is that the plantings be completed by 15 November 2018, and that additional trees numbering between 18 and 20 to be added.
Yep.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Yes, to be added along the eastern edge of the site.
Every 25 feet.
Okay. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the minor modification with the aforementioned conditions?
So moved.
All right, I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second that.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. All right, 4-1. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Next item is Autumn Drive, Autumn Estates approval not required plan for lots 21, 22, and 23. This is 35 and 32 Autumn Drive, assessor's map plots as noted in the agenda. Is there an applicant?
So, for the record, Mr. Chairman, my name is John Glosser, Glosser Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole. So I'm the engineer who drew the plan and submitted it to the town on behalf of the three owners. Mr. Goby is here, who's the owner of Lot 23. And basically, Abby, your agent, discovered that two of the lots 20 and 21, actually had lost their zoning freeze. This Autumn Estates was approved back, I think, in the year 2000. So those two lots had lost their zoning freeze with regard to the amount of contiguous upland, which needed to be 30,000 square feet. So by reconfiguring the lots, not changing the frontage, but just reconfiguring the lot lines, between the three lots, we were able to draw lots where lots 20 and 21 do have the required 30,000 square feet of upland, contiguous upland area, and the required frontage and the required area and the shape, meeting the shape factor. Lot 23 was always shown on the plan. Lot 23 essentially is 100% wetlands and was always shown on the plans as not being a buildable lot because of it has no frontage, and at the time it didn't meet the requirements, which I think was 12,000 square feet for upland area. So on the original definitive plan, it was not shown as a buildable lot, and it's still labeled as not a buildable lot. So essentially it's a swapping of some upland between lot 20 and 21 to create the buildable, the 30,000 square feet upland area.
Do you have something that shows the old lines as well as the new?
I have, let's see, it was in your packet, sorry, I didn't know how to use the screen here, but.
So the size of those two lots is increasing, is that it?
Yes, the two house lots at the end of the cul-de-sac are increasing in size, and then the non-buildable lot at the end of the street is decreasing?
Yes, it's
A little bit. So I can pass down the approved subdivision plan from 2002 that was endorsed, and then this one here shows the approved lot lines from 2002 are highlighted in yellow, and then the pink are the proposed new lot lines. And as the applicant mentioned, we did discover, did some background on these properties. When this project was, subdivision was approved by the planning board in 99 and then endorsed by you in 2002, the minimum upland area was only 12,000 square feet, but then it did, there was a zoning change that increased that to 30,000 square feet. They did file a subdivision plan to get a zoning freeze. However, that was not acted upon. So the purpose of this plan is to reconfigure the lots so that they have the minimum upland requirement. And when the applicant first contacted me, I thought an A&R filing would be the appropriate filing. However, on further review, once we received this recently, I felt it would require a formal modification application to allow a public hearing where we'd send notice to all the lot owners and the parties of interest in compliance with Mass General laws, which says if a modification to a approved subdivision plan requires a new public hearing for all lots in the subdivision if lots have sold. So right now it's really a difference in the application form that was submitted. An A&R plan was submitted April 12th, so there's not time for a public hearing notification for this meeting. If it was going to be a modification, it would have to be one of your May meetings, and we have not done that.
So what are the colors indicate here? You have yellow and you have...
The pink is the proposed new lot lines. The yellow is the lot lines approved back in 2002 by you. Because the lots are getting bigger so that they meet the uplands requirement and being reconfigured.
So the one lot, well, they're labeled 20, okay, well, the lot 20 is actually getting a leg off to the side? Yeah.
Yes, because it used to be just right here was
And now
20.
it's going here?
Then 21 was like this, and then this was the open space parcel here. And this is just a drainage easement.
Oh, so this diagram is not the lots, this is just,
Nope, that's it.
that's
This
it?
is, oh yeah, so this is the approved lot, the aerial view, yeah, sorry, but that aerial view is the way it was approved, this lot configuration, how it was approved back in 2002.
Oh, that's the original, okay, that's not the
It's
proposed.
easier to see this.
Yeah.
So we have a drainage area that was, what, a separate lot? Oh, no, the drainage area was part of this one? And it's still part of, something,
I'm sorry, Mr. Holman.
yeah, there's something labeled drainage easement.
Right, there's a drainage easement, there's a detention basin at the back of lots 20 and 21. So,
Oh, right, okay, it's not a separate lot, it's just,
there's
Oh,
an
okay.
easement.
right, sorry, okay, it's an
Okay.
easement, sorry.
There's
So
a detention
actually,
basin that straddles both
So-
lots, and it's in an easement.
I think it's unfortunate that this sort of is producing the opposite of what we want to do, which is to keep the wetlands separate from the lots. And in this case, you're incorporating more wetlands into the existing lot. How is that gonna work, though? How does that make, how are you creating more upland when you do this? Where is the upland and how those calculations work? Because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Each one of the lots, well, if you look on the plan from the Registry of Deeds, right, it will identify the amount of uplands on each of those lots, the plan underneath. So that identifies the amount of wetland and the amount of upland on each lot, and you can simply subtract if you like to find out the amount of wetlands. So we didn't create any more uplands or wetlands, they were just apportioned differently back in 1999 or when we drew those plans. So now we've just moved the lot lines to apportion the upland portion so that 30,000 square feet is on each lot. If you just add those numbers, you'll see. Back then, there was more than 60,000 square feet. So now that's how it's been reapportioned.
So one lot gets considerably bigger, one goes from 40,000 to, what, 76,000? And the other lot goes from, what, 48,000 to what? Oh, it goes to 40, it gets, after it gets smaller? All right, that makes a little more sense. One gets bigger, the other gets a little smaller.
I don't have the benefit of having the older plan in front of me, but
So Abby,
lot 20 now has, lot 20 might be quite a bit bigger, but it's 30,387 square feet of non-wetland area, contiguous and touching the frontage and actually along the entire frontage. Lot 21A, which is the lot sort of as you're driving into the cul-de-sac on the right side, now the size of the lot is 40,215 square feet, and it has 35,889 square feet of non-wetland area. So we simply moved the lot line to allow for each of the two lots to have the required upland area. We haven't changed the frontage of the lots, they have the same frontage. And it's not that, it still meets today's requirement of 125 feet. And both lots meet today's requirement of 40,000 square feet of lot area. So, we did submit an opinion from attorney Gene Dumond of Baker, Braverman, and Barbadaro, saying that this is the proper way to handle this is an A&R plan, that this doesn't rise to the level of a modification plan. Autumn Drive, is it Autumn Drive or Autumn Lane?
It's Drive.
Autumn Drive is a public street, so the town of Westwood owns Autumn Drive, and it's maintained by the town of Westwood. So this is, something that happens often, I would think, in front of the Westwood Planning Board, that someone moves a lot line on a public street to swap land with a neighbor or whatever it may be. In this case, as I said, your planner astutely picked up the fact that the zoning freeze had expired, and that something needed to be done to make these buildable lots. And she didn't just call me up out of the blue. I think, had we filed for building permits? Yeah, I think we were in the process of filing for building permits, and that's when Abby discovered the problem. So this is a remedy. Mr. Attorney DeMons, this is the legal way to do this, and we are asking the board to find that this is not a subdivision, and that therefore it's an approval not required action.
Were they, at the previous application, was there anything on file as far as abutters being concerned about this?
No, or I just don't really know. It was before electronic submissions. It was first approved back in the 60s,
Yeah.
then a number of years later.
And there were 5 lots in the subdivision at that time?
No, it was more than that. I think it started off as 9 lots, and then it was extended to 4 lots, and then there was another modification in 2008. So essentially, I think what you have before you, these 2 lots do meet the minimum frontage requirements in the zoning. It's not that it necessarily doesn't, it meets the requirements for an A&R. However, we would typically interpret this modification to be, rise to the level of a modification where we want to notify all lot owners in the subdivision. So it's really a question of how we get to this plan.
Did we get an opinion from town council?
I did review it with town council, and it's a little bit open to interpretation that the plan submitted does meet the requirements for an A&R, but really it's unclear as what constitutes a modification that triggers that notification. So it really comes down to, in the planning board's opinion, do you think this requires the full public hearing notification? If you did, if you're leaning towards denying this, you would have to deny it on the basis that the application was not filed under the appropriate applications in Chapter 81, or Chapter 41, Section 81 W and T, which requires the public hearing notification to all affecting all lot owners.
Well, I know we've had a number of A&Rs that were publicly notified, and people came to the meetings and they were not happy about what was going to be done, but it met the requirements, and so we endorsed the A&R. It seems to me something like this should be subject to the same kind of public awareness of what's going on.
So Abby, what you're saying is that if there's a public notice, that's because it would be a subdivision modification?
Right. A formal modification of a subdivision requires the same notification as the original definitive subdivision application.
But last year, the town went and accepted that roadway. That was was that the road with all the trees?
No, that was.
Oh, this is on the other side of the?
Yes, this one was accepted a few years ago, I think.
Oh.
Several
Oh,
years
this is the
ago.
other side of Winter Street from?
Yes. And the last time you saw a subdivision modification was early last fall, when they had requested the changes to the trees. And in that case, we did do a full public hearing with notification to
Let's see,
abutters.
okay, but that was, right, so that's again, that was a subdivision, but then we accepted it, and this one's been accepted for quite a
Yep,
long time.
The street's been accepted
Yeah, quite a-
for,
Which makes it kind of no longer a
At least-
subdivision, under the subdivision process. Then it becomes, the regular street, and it's under regular A&R process. And unfortunately, and I hate to get philosophical about this, but again, here we have another A&R where people don't get notified simply because we have A&Rs in this state. We're the only state in the whole country that does this. We've had zoning reform bills before our state legislature for years and years. It hasn't passed, so we still have A&Rs like this that we have to deal with, where there's such a difference between what we can do under subdivision rules and regs and what we can do under an A&R. So that's why there's no notification required.
right. Actually, one other question is, we would need the consent of the property owners, and these two lots, these two lots have been sold, right? The two house lots, have they been sold to other
Not
companies, or-
recently, no.
but
The signatures of the three owners.
Are the current owners,
on the
okay, yep.
application.
Yep, I saw that there were the, 2 or 3 property owner signatures
Well,
on the
those are
application.
those are the three current owners,
The
yes.
current
And Mr. Chairman, if you would like, it's up to you, Attorney Robert Shelmerdine, who represents one of the potential buyers of the property, is here. He's a real estate attorney, if you would like him to address any questions that you might have regarding this. But, I've been doing this a long time, and as you said, Mr. Olenoff, this is a public street. We're simply moving a lot line, and this does not rise to the level of a modification. If we were changing the street, moving the street, changing the size of the street, changing the construction of the street, something like that, yes, that's a modification, but this does not rise under Massachusetts laws. This does not rise to that level. We're not changing anything other than moving a lot line around.
So did our town engineer look over and verify all these figures as to where the wetlands are and where the upland is?
No, we don't have a town engineer right now, but,
But we do have a,
conservation agent, I don't know.
So the wetlands shown on the current plan that you have are wetlands that are shown on 3 plans that have orders of conditions. So they have been frozen from about a year ago for 3 years. So those are the wetlands. And I confirmed that with the Conservation Commission agent recently, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago or a month ago, because I wanted to get the Conservation Commission agent, sort of aware of what we were doing, and that there was going to be a minor modification of the orders of conditions that they had issued for 20 and 21, because they were issued prior to your agent finding that there was a problem with the upland area under the zoning. So the wetlands location is confirmed in the sense that there's been an order of conditions written based on those wetland locations.
So these lots, they were a part of the original subdivision plan, correct?
Right,
So-
2 house lots and then the non-buildable lot at the end.
And if the street hadn't been accepted, this would still be like it would be a subdivision.
Yep, it would just, so, right, the purpose of this plan is to create buildable lots to get that upland requirement.
Is this a simple majority vote or? What is
Yes,
it?
3, you need 3 votes.
I don't have any further questions. Does anyone else have any further questions or concerns? Okay.
I move that we accept this A&R.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of accepting the A and R, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No,
Okay, we have a vote of 4-1. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have the, you want, maybe I'll put it down here for everyone to sign.
So Abby, do we need to do a motion to adjourn and reconvene across down the street, or just
Yes.
walk? Well, yeah.
Yeah, you should, yes, you have, until the minutes, and then if you adjourn.
Sign it. Is there a pen one?
I have them. The paper can be right there.
This isn't minutes, not hours. Right? Okay, did anyone have oh, sorry, Brian, but did anyone have commentary on the minutes from March 5th?
I move that we approve the minutes from March 5th.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have 5 ayes.
Any postpones, anyone's vote?
Yes, if you hold on to that for the next meeting.
Got it.
How excited are you?
To have my Tuesday nights. That's
Yeah.
fine. I'm excited, actually.
Yeah, for our next meeting, should we have reports perhaps on the housing issues that several that just come up with it's like the housing subcommittee.
Okay, yes, we'll do
I don't
something.
want to do that right now.
Yep.
So sorry, should we actually do a motion to adjourn, or do we
Yes.
just, okay?
I think you should adjourn, and then we'll all go down, reconvene
Alright.
at the library.
All right, can I hear a motion to adjourn so we can depart for the FinCom meeting at the library?
A motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.